Josef, you started your IndyCar racing career on this track 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Is this race more emotional for you?
That's a good question. No one's asked me that. Maybe in a way, yes. It was my first IndyCar race, which is very nerve-wracking. You know, when you come into a professional level of sports, it's something you work your whole life for. So you really want to do a good job. And I remember that race vividly. The biggest thing I remember was that it felt forever. You know, so when I'm in the race, I'm used to maybe a race that's a third or a half the distance. So you get halfway through the race, and I'm like, we're probably almost done, right? And they're like, well, you got a halfway to go still. I'm like, what? So, you know, the physical side of driving an IndyCar is very tough, very demanding. So you lose a lot of body weight in the car. You lose a lot of water with all the temperature. So I just remember that race being super grueling. But it's one of my favorite events of the year. St. Pete has always, I think, lit up the community for IndyCar and for that town, and everyone loves coming down here to see it.
What is your favorite part about coming to the Sunshine State for that race?
I'm telling you, it's the atmosphere. You just can't replicate it. You know, for us, there's a race in Formula One called the Monaco Grand Prix, and I always found that this event's kind of like our Monaco. You know, it's right by the water. You've got the marina there. You got boats. You got a really beautiful little quaint city. And you got people coming from all over the states just to check out this little race. So I think St. Pete really transforms. You know, it's not necessarily a sleepy town, but it's not a super bustly, busy place. And then I feel like for race weekend, it just comes alive. So that atmosphere to me is so much fun, and I really enjoy that. You know, I get to drive the car, and it's the best job out there, and it's one of the best seats in the house. But, you know, just the atmosphere at night, getting to walk around and see that ambiance, that's really my favorite part for 4 or 5 days.
Now, you're from Nashville. Had you been to St. Pete prior to these races?
I can't remember if I'd been to St. Pete. I've been through Tampa, you know, because Nashville, it's kind of a short drive as far as the United States goes to get down to Florida. A lot of people go to Destin or all sorts of Panama Beach. Yeah, it's you know, spring break's popular to come down here. But I think I'd been through Tampa. I don't know if I'd been to St. Pete before. So it was the first time for me to visit that area of Florida. But now I feel like it's just our welcoming party for the year. You know, it's the 15th annual year that we're going to be running, which is very cool. It's cool to have that tradition, and that's what it feels like to me. You know, when we know when we're coming down here, the IndyCar season is starting, and that's an exciting time. We've had 4 or 5 months off, and now we finally get to get going again.
Now, I understand you transitioned into racing as a teenager. Yeah. You played perhaps the more traditional sports, if you will, baseball, basketball. What drew you to racing? How did you get into it?
Racing's weird, you know, like, so I grew up in, the suburbs of Nashville, Tennessee, and, you know, from there, it's just like Florida. You know, most kids are going to play baseball, soccer, football, hockey, whatever it is. You're going to play, you know, the sort of traditional sports in North America. And racing, you go, you know, what the heck is that? Most people don't even know how to get involved. And in Nashville, Tennessee, it was the same way. It was like, where's a go-kart track? Is that how you start? How do you get in cars? It's very confusing. So yeah, when I was young, I always wanted to race something. I was always into race cars. And then basically you just got to figure out where a go-kart track is. And actually Florida is a great place for it. There's tons of go-kart tracks in Florida. So as a kid, that's really what you do. You just get into a go-kart, and I started doing that when I was 13. And once I started, I didn't want to play baseball. I didn't want to play basketball anymore. I just wanted to race. And somehow, some way, got into cars. It all worked out. And now I drive professionally. It's a crazy story. I don't even know how it worked out, but it somehow did.
Do you remember pestering your parents, or did a friend take you to a race car track? I mean, when was the start?
So I always had it on TV. My dad and my grandfather were big racing fans, so I always watched racing when I was a kid. But man, anything that had an engine or 4 wheels, I was just so infatuated by it. I was like, man, I really want a go-kart. Ever since I was 2 years old, I knew I wanted a go-kart. But I wasn't allowed to have one because my parents didn't think it was safe. Now look at what I do. It's actually funny to look back on it, that they were so safety conscious, and now I actually drive cars professionally for a living. So yeah, I always loved it as a kid, and I liked other sports, but racing it hooked me in. And I didn't know how much I loved it until I started. When I really drove a go-kart for the first time, I truly fell in love with it, and that was what became my passion.
What has kept you in it for this long? Is it just you found your passion? Is that what it is?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I love, there's so much more to racing than just what you see on TV. You know, a lot of people, they'll watch it and they'll say it's about the driver, and you watch the drivers drive and race against each other, and that's really all of it. But it's such a team atmosphere. You have engineers, mechanics, all working together and collaborating with the driver to get the most out of the car. And you have pit stops. You have all these decisions that have to be made leading up to the weekend, during the weekend, after the weekend that people don't realize. So it's really for me, it's like flying a rocket ship. I mean, with NASA, they have mission control. They have all the engineers designing the rocket, making it do exactly what it needs to do, and then you execute by actually firing the rocket off and going into space. And a race car is so similar to that. It's obviously not a rocket ship, it's a race car, but the process of the way you go about doing things, it's all very similar. So, that mentality, all the engineering-driven thought process behind it, I fell in love with that, and it's what keeps me in the game.
Now, last year you had your best finish in this race. I believe you finished in 7th. What will it take this year to beat that or win it all?
We got to be better at St. Pete. I don't know how. I've won a lot of races, and St. Pete's always been one of the places that's tough for me to win. I don't know if it's the nerves. It's the first race of the year. I had too much time to think about it in the off season, but I don't know. We've just got to. We've had good race cars around here, but we always get involved in an incident. I feel like we always get tangled up with one person or another. And that's the tough thing. You come into this race, everyone's very jittery, they want to get going for the year. So we get a lot of wrecks. Turn 1 for the start of the race, people are antsy. They haven't been in a car in 4 or 5 months racing each other.
Including you? You're antsy?
Including me, so I'm antsy, and you end up just getting involved in something. So you got to steer clear of the wrecks. And if you can do that and you have a fast car, you can possibly win this race. And I'm with the right team. My team has won this race, probably half of the races they've won. So it's a good group, I have good teammates. We just got to figure out how to complete the whole weekend. And I'm going to be a happy boy if we can win around this place.